This is my awe picture. That's me at 5 years old in Scott, Louisiana, in the heart of Cajun country. My mom's there in the middle, exhausted from teaching all day, still finding the energy to smile. And you see that cute little guy in the polyester outfit on the left? The cuter, smarter one? Yeah, that's me. My younger brother Patrick disputes this characterization loudly. Ever the comedian, he calls the look trailer park chic meets forever chemicals. My parents were both teachers whose own parents never made it past the 8th grade, but they believed with a ferocity that still humbles me that education could transform everything. They were teaching me to dream bigger than a trailer in Louisiana, to want more, to become more, but they were also teaching me something else, something that I wouldn't understand until much later. That to survive in a world that wasn't really built for me, I had to become someone else, someone harder, someone who didn't show weakness, someone who could protect himself. That little boy didn't know he would one day fly jets in the U.S. Marine Corps, but he's already learning something that would take him 40 years to unlearn. He was learning that the world rewards armor, that vulnerability is dangerous, that to lead, you must never admit that you're struggling. That little boy was learning what my good friend Mark Goodman calls putting on the earth suit. This was the earth suit that was issued to me by the United States Marine Corps. It was part of the armor that kept me alive at 30,000 feet. But everyone wears an earth suit. It's the persona that you strap on to convince the world and yourself that you are in control. It's made of our titles, our credentials, these days our absolutely curated social media content. My earth suit was battle tested. It was the earth suit and the armor of a combat veteran, the earth suit of a turnaround executive. Today, I'm going to talk to you about some stories about how I learned some of the most significant leadership lessons of my life. 3 lessons, in fact, each arriving with a cost, because leadership scar tissue is earned. The theme is quite simple. I had to unzip to flip. Let me take you back to 2009. The world was experiencing the worst economic crises since the Great Depression. Banks were failing, companies were collapsing, factories were closing all over the world. And Harley-Davidson, an American icon, was in free fall. When people are worried about losing their house, they're not buying motorcycles. We lost 40% of our revenue in a single year. I was standing in the middle of a 1.5 million square foot factory, 41 buildings spread across 232 acres in York, Pennsylvania. My mission was clear. This Marine had to transform the factory or die trying. Most mornings, I woke up at 4 a.m., I put on my pants and thought to myself, this is bleeping brutal. But I couldn't say that out loud. General managers don't admit defeat. Marines don't show weakness. What do? They lean into the organizational structure that put them at the top of the triangle. The org structure in 2009 was very traditional, classic command and control. Management was at the top, workers were at the bottom. But when we studied the best manufacturers in the world, we relearned a very simple truth. The people closest to the work are the ones who really create value in the eyes of your customers. The men and women who transformed American-made steel at one end of the factory and turned it into exquisite rolling jewelry at the other end of the factory, they were the ones who created the real value that customers were willing to pay a premium for. Everyone else, supervisors, managers, and especially the general manager, were there just to support. Our job wasn't to direct, it was to remove obstacles. So we did something radical. We flipped the triangle. Here's what flipping the triangle actually means. The flip is reinvention. It's the moment when you choose transformation over comfort. In our factory, the flip meant we had to change who we valued. It changed who had to admit they didn't know. It changed where power and control actually resided. In the new organizational structure, team leaders were at the top, team leaders and the operators were at the top, and at the bottom, me. I started introducing myself differently. I'd walk into a meeting and say, "Hi, I'm Ed Magee, General Manager. I am the bottom of the triangle." But the hard truth is that every transformation has a cost, and someone has to pay that cost. The union president at the time was an amazing leader. Let's call him Dave. Dave wasn't a cheerleader. He was a skeptic, a realist, the kind of guy who'd seen every management promise broken. During one of our early team building events, Dave and I started to develop a level of rapport, the kind of rapport that happens when two leaders are facing a daunting task. The truth is, I said, "Dave, I'm going to need your help if we're going to navigate all of this change together." Honestly, he had every reason to tell me to pound sand. The reality was, Dave did something very, very interesting. He took the time to understand the transformation math. Not because he trusted me. We'd only just begun this journey together. Because Dave loved those 2,000 workers more than he loved being union president. He looked at the numbers, looked at the global recession, looked at all of the changes that were going on, and honestly, he recognized at some level before I did that if we didn't change, all of us would lose. So Dave stood up in front of his people, the people who had elected him, the people who trusted him, and he told them the truth. This contract is going to hurt. We're going to lose things that we fought for. But if we don't do this, we're not going to have a factory left to fight for. In the fall of 2009, 2,000 workers voted on a contract knowing that only 1,000 would have jobs at the end. 89% said yes. Dave's reward? He lost his next election. In my leadership book, Dave is a hero. But the reality is, most leadership books don't tell you that transformation comes at a cost and someone has to pay that cost. That factory is still standing today, still making motorcycles, still making dreams, still employing over 1,000 people because one man decided that some things are worth losing for. In 2009, we almost shut down the factory. In 2013, we won a major Manufacturing Excellence Award, one of only 7 factories in North America to do so. But here's what I learned in those years of extreme factory makeover. You cannot transform a factory while you're comfortably zipped inside your Earth suit. That's lesson 1. All right, back to my catfishing picture here. By 2010, the real transformation work was underway. But the reality was I was suffocating inside the suit of the invincible Marine. I was failing, recovering, barely failing again. I was starting to march with my head down. And as the Marines say, when you march with your head down, the march feels twice as long. I was missing bedtimes, missing dinners, missing the wife and 2 young girls who I was supposedly doing all of this for. But the reality was, I was about to break under all of that weight. One morning, I walked into my office, only to find my boss, Carl Eberle, sitting at my desk. Carl was an operations giant, tough, seasoned, no nonsense, the kind of leader who'd seen everything. My mouth got a little dry, like it is right now. A bead of sweat formed beneath all of that armor. And I looked at him and said, "Carl, if you need me to quit, I'll quit. I don't know if I can take us there." And he looked at me, not with disappointment, but with a look that almost resembled relief. He leaned back in his chair and he smiled and said, "Ed, we're spending $100 million on your education. Why would I want you to quit?" And then he looked at me and said 9 words that cut right through my armor. "But you're right, Ed. You can't do this alone." That was the moment where the second lesson arrived. You can't do this alone. wasn't a reason to fail, it was a reason to be human. And what I recognized in that moment was the second lesson. Vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is the connecting tissue that binds teams together. The universe will send you one of two signals in this moment. The first one is the whisper. The whisper is the canary in the coal mine. For me, the whisper showed up on a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting in my office and looking at emails that I really didn't want to answer, getting ready for a Monday morning that I was dreading. And my wife, Jamel, walks in and said, "You okay?" She had been asking that question regularly during the entire transformation. I looked at her and responded with the classic Marine retort when asked to confront feelings. "Yeah, I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. And she knew it. And I knew she knew it. And in that moment, I recognized that I was losing a level of control. I had to do something very different. That was the moment where I realized the whisper. It's the voice in your head that's saying you're moving, you're working as hard as you've ever worked, but you're not moving forward. You're just polishing your earth suit. I had to step back and make some different decisions. But what do we normally do? We wait for the next signal. That's the brick. The brick is the heart attack. It's the layoff notice. It's the visit to Lancaster General Hospital when your earth suit is compressing your chest. The brick is the crisis that shatters all the armor entirely because you've waited too long. Most of us wait for the brick. We wait until we're completely broken to reinvent ourselves. But I'm here to tell you, you don't have to wait for the brick. You can listen to the warning sign. The universe always whispers before it throws. That's the third lesson. The universe needs to be listened to. When it whispers, when you hear those canaries stop singing, you need to pay attention and listen to that lesson, because the next signal that you're going to get is the brick. When I turned 60 over Christmas, I couldn't stop thinking about that little boy in the polyester outfit. He spent his life becoming who he thought what the world needed him to be. General manager, combat veteran, turnaround executive. He thought all of those earth suits would be enough. But the reality was they were never enough until he found the people who loved him enough to take them off. Unzipping the earth suit, it's not a reward for successful leadership. It's a prerequisite. I had to unzip to flip. What about you? Your earth suit. Do you need to unzip to flip? Thank you.